Hey friends, welcome to day 7 of Z Memories with Utaru Mono, Itsuwari no Kamen, and Futari no Hakoro, or for those of us in the US, Mask of Deception and Mask of Truth. And let me just start out by saying that Futari no Hakoro, translated out to the two Hakoros, is a much better title in every way than the Mask of Truth, which is incredibly uninspiring. I'll call them the Haku duology when referring to these two, so as to not confuse them with the original. I truly did enjoy the Haku duology. I've really wanted to do a video on them since a long time ago, but there were a whole host of technical reasons, much of what I went over during the initial announcement to Z Memories, as to why I just never did it up until now. I'd originally played both of these in Japanese when they first came out in 2015 and 2016 respectively. The Haku duology as a whole are one of my favorite visual novels, but I really didn't want to go pick up the English copies of the game, seeing as how I already played through the Japanese version. It also doesn't help that these two visual novels aren't something you're meant to play more than once. It's a single route story with no decisions that actually impact the story in any way. Also, capturing the footage I need for my PS3 on life support would have been a huge hassle. And of course, the most important reason, I would have to play through the entire game again to get footage, and these two visual novels are not short. I think my playthrough of both combined was like at least 120-ish hours. Enough with the griping though, let's get back to talking about the main topic of the day. What is Utaru Mono, the Haku duology as I call it, anyways? First off, both of these are actually a direct sequel to a much older game called, well, Utaru Mono. This original came out in 2002 by the doujin group Leaf, and got a fan translation in 2008 by Mirror Moon, the same guys who I mentioned back in day 1 of Z Memories, who did the Tsukihime translation. Utaru Mono, to sum it up real fast without spoilers, as it's not the main topic of today, is basically about an amnesiac guy who wakes up in a village full of animal ear people with a mask permanently affixed to his face. There he meets Erudu and Arudu, who take him in and name him Hakoro after their late father. Upon war being brought to the small village he wakes up in, Hakoro proceeds to take up arms and stop the bloodshed on this island nation by conquering all the separate countries under one banner. Completely honest thoughts here, I don't think the original Utaru Mono is great. Like, it's not a bad game, but it's kind of okay or so-so. Both story and gameplay wise, it didn't really blow me away. Do you even need to play this original to play today's topic? No, not really. Although there is a ton of fan service for people who've played the original in the sequel I'm talking about today. Especially the ending, Sweet Lord, but I'll get to that. Now, picture this. It's around the year 2015, and while at a convention of sorts, I suddenly see the announcement that, wow, they're releasing a sequel to Utaru Mono. And my very first reaction upon hearing this is, okay, that's cool. Isn't that game like a decade old? You gotta realize, I just mentioned it, I don't think the original was that great. But nonetheless, I was still interested in checking it out, and indeed I did, and I was pleasantly surprised. As there is a good chance some of you have not played this series already. For one, it's only on PlayStation 3, 4, and Vita, so understandable. Here's a quick, mostly spoiler-free summary of it. Yet another amnesiac is picked up by yet another animal-eared girl named Kuon on a snowy mountain. This amnesiac is then given the name Haku, named after, well, pretty much the main character of the original game. They end up going to the capital of Yamato to perhaps learn more about where he came from, when a surprise connection to the Emperor of Yamato ends up with Haku and Kuon being embroiled in the coming wars that Yamato faces. I have got quite a bit to talk about, but I'll get to that later in the spoiler section. My reaction to the initial 20 hours of the first game was that it was insanely boring. That said, eventually got really good, and by the end of the second game, I can safely say that Utaru Mono, Itsuwari no Kamen, and Futari no Hakoro, as a complete experience, is definitely one of my favorite visual novels. If the original Utaru Mono was like a 6 or a 7, then these two games together are a solid 9, maybe even a 10. The reason why I emphasize together is that individually, both games have pacing issues. Mainly because it's obvious they were made to be one visual novel that was split into two. The first game, Itsuwari no Kamen, or Mask of Deception in the US, ends up with the vast majority of it being world building and slowly introducing every character that makes up the cast. Haku, Kuon, and their friends spend about 80% of the game dicking around at the capital of Yamato. Stuff like, oh no! Haku accidentally walks in on them bathing. Let's go buy yaoi fanfic. Oh, drinking party. Pretty much a lot of the stuff you expect to happen happens. And yeah, it's still fun. And it does really help endear the player to all the characters. But there's a huge super pressing war looming on the horizon. Sometimes I kind of want to get more into that, you know? Near the end of the first game though, things start picking up rapidly and the story starts to get really interesting as all the conflicts that were looming in the background start to appear in the forefront. Then it just ends with like a giant cliffhanger, and I had to wait one whole year before I got to continue a story that I was starting to get really invested in. That was a huge bummer. Futari no Akodo, or Mask of Truth in the US, picks up right where Itsugari no Kamen ends, and is definitely a wild ride all the way through, but you really need to play the first part of the duology, since a lot of the joy of the second part is watching all these characters change and grow from who they were in the first game. Also, the game automatically assumes you already played the first one, and they don't really pick you up to speed on who all these people are and why you should care about them. Outside the visual novel aspect, the gameplay is also a major part of the Utaru Erumono series. The best way I can describe it is that it's a tactics game, similar to Final Fantasy Tactics, where it takes place on a grid system, and you move characters in turn phases, so your turn and the enemy's turn. Utaru Erumono does spice things up a little bit though, by having the players time their attacks to combo and do more damage. It's still the exact same tactical gameplay that the original 2002 Utaru Erumono had, but greatly polished, looking a lot better, and having a lot more diversity. Characters all have different abilities, powers, ranges, and unlike in the first game, you do end up using a vast majority of them throughout most of it. Futari no Akodo upgrades the gameplay even further with combo abilities combining pairs of units to perform cool finishes together, which is nice to see. There's even an RPG aspect where characters level up and you have to allocate how they grow, put points in certain stats, so on. I found the difficulty to be pretty good overall on the hardest setting, where some battles feel decently challenging, but I never did have to restart any battle throughout the story, unless I did something massively dumb. It plays well, it looks good, and I mean it looks good not compared to other visual novels, but as a console game in general, and especially in comparison to the original. Haku is personally, to me, a pretty likable protagonist. Mostly because I really like that whole competent but a complete slacker kind of character. You know, that he's a good guy deep down, caring about his friends' well-being, but also equally caring about just living a relaxing life and, you know, getting as many holidays as possible. However, when push comes to shove by the end of the first game, Haku will be forced to make hard decisions that will impact everyone he knows. Kuon similarly plays off Haku quite well as the energetic strong lady, whose outgoing nature contrasts with Haku's laid-back self. I also like Atui. She's cute, even if she's boring on some bouts of berserking insanity. What starts out as a slice of life story with Animo Year Girls ends up becoming one of the best war drama stories I've ever played. While the story itself isn't super mind-blowing, especially if you've played the original, the character development, how they interact with each other, grow, and change, especially from the first part onto the second part, is some of the best I've seen in any story, period. Music's awesome, Suara does great work, none of which I can, let you listen to, but trust me, it's really good, check it out yourself. There are many characters like Nekone and Maroro that I dislike, came to hate even more, but by the finale of part 2, was quite impressed by how they turned out. I really appreciated how they managed to make Tsukudu, the nation founded by Akodo at the end of the 2002 original, a major part of this new duology, yet at the same time, they didn't overshadow our new cast with the original ones. They didn't have to do that, I didn't really even expect them to, as it's been over a decade since the original 2002 release. But they did it, and they did it pretty well. I really like the Haku duology, and if you haven't already played it, I highly recommend you do so this instant. Mostly because I'm about to jump straight into hard spoiler territory, so we can fangasm about my favorite moments in it, as I imagine most of us have the same ones. I'll even tease the next day of Z Memories for those who haven't played it and don't want to get themselves spoiled. It'll be on a Key Studios game. I will reiterate, even though you just heard a huge warning, if you haven't played the game already, stop this video and go play it. It's good. I recommend it. These are gonna be some fat spoilers. Okay, so one of my favorite parts about the Haku duology is definitely the climax of the first game. where after sitting through all that slice of life stuff and everyone having a great time between missions, shit starts to get real with the death of Emperor Yamato and also Haku's brother. More than that though, it's Oshitoru's death that really got to me. It's not like I didn't see it coming. The game kind of foreshadows it pretty obviously. At one point earlier in the game, Haku picks up Oshitoru's mask and finds out that with it on, he looks suspiciously identical to the man himself. The title of the first part in both English and Japanese is also literally called The False Mask. Now, what got me wasn't the fact that it happened, but how they portrayed it and what Haku decides to do at the end. It was a climactic battle between Oshitoru and Burai, where they transform into giant kaiju monsters and battle with each other, complete with laser beams. It might just be the child at heart deep inside of me, but I really enjoyed this aspect of the fight. The part that did surprise me, however, is what takes place after this climactic battle, as Haku takes in Oshitoru's last words as he lays dying, and Haku decides to take on the mantle of Oshitoru, and tells his friends that Haku perished in the fight, with only Nekone and him knowing the truth, because Nekone is an idiot who totally got her favorite brother killed. I expected Haku to take on Oshitoru's role. I did not expect him to hide that fact from all his companions. Watching Kuon break down in front of him was exceedingly heartbreaking, and did make me tear up. Another surprise highlight of the duology was Madodo, who I'll be shortening to Mado from this point on because Madodo is hard to say. He initially starts out in part 1 as like a joke character who was cowardly, wimpy, a suck up to his superiors, and wore face paint like a clown. Doesn't help that he also refers to himself in the third person. Since Mado became such good friends with Haku, it was easy to imagine he would end up sticking around to the end as a sort of comic relief character. Now imagine my surprise when Mado comes back in part 2, complete change of face paint, and seeking vengeance on Oshitoru for letting his best friend die in a conflict he was just kind of roped into. His shift from supporting cast member to antagonist is done surprisingly well, and plays off on the major plot point on how far Haku is willing to cover up his identity to uphold Oshitoru's dying wishes. It's really tragic how you slowly see Mado fall into insanity, especially by the machinations of the main antagonist, and how Haku isn't able to help him until it was too late. Mado goes from this kind of joke character to a legitimate threat in the second game, repeatedly cornering Haku and his friends time and time again. And when he finally breaks free of the brainwashing parasite, and you think he's gonna come back to the party, he sacrifices himself instead to protect Haku one last time. A surprisingly well done character. Of course, as we're talking about highlights, we can't forget about the big moment in Futari no Hakoro, when Kuon, disguised from Haku and the rest of the gang as the priestess of Tsuskuru, fights Anju, and when Haku lets slip one of his verbal tics, and Kuon finally recognizes that Oshitoru is actually Haku, pretending to be him all along.
特別労働手当でももらわんと割に合わんな。
今なんでまさか
It's really cathartic, especially as Kuon gets momentarily distracted from relief mid-fight. It's like, finally, yes, get together you two, come on! Just hearing it again right now gives me shivers. It is one of the most satisfying moments in the entire Haku duology. Atui recognizing Haku on the ship was also a great scene, where she gives him a kiss and is willing to wait until he shows himself. Cute as all heck, but you know, it's not given the royal treatment like the other one I just mentioned. Finally, I gotta talk about the ending, which is an absolutely amazing sequence of events, full of emotional gut punches, exceedingly sappy, and definitely full of fan service. We'll start out with the reintroduction of Erudu for the first time in 14 years. A really great moment as no one actually refers to her by name up until this moment. While we've seen all the main characters of the original Utaru Erumono all grown up, like Arudu, Kagura, and so on, but up until this point, no mention of Erudu. She shows up at the final shrine, standing by a sealed Hakoro after all these years. And it also gives that, oh hell yeah, the whole gang finally showed up feeling. Haku's final sacrifice is up next, where his mask finally breaks after finally finishing its duty, and he can reveal to his companions that it was him all along. Seeing their reactions after over 90 plus hours of having to wait for that one moment is a tearjerker. You get to see Haku acknowledge everyone one by one, with each person having their own piece to say. Whether they realized it was him, whether they didn't, how they're still waiting for him all this time. The actual final boss is also one of the biggest pieces of fan service that I honestly really loved. And I imagine anyone who played the original can attest to that. For the final battle, you're forced to battle with the spiritual versions of all the main characters from the original Utaru Mono, due to Kuon going berserk after seeing Haku die for a second time. For real this time, maybe. This then all climaxes with Haku receiving God Mode from Hakoto, coming back from the dead, rocking the mask of the original 2002 release, but more importantly, blasting not just Tenkakeru Hoshi theme song from part 1, but also an instrumental version of Kimi Dake no Tabiji from the original, and a modern rendition of Eikyu-ni, another song from the original. It's absolutely amazing. Again, not gonna lie, this entire ending sequence is pretty dang sappy, but that's exactly why I like it so much. While it's definitely pandering to my nostalgia, I'm a huge sucker for callbacks to previous games in a series like this. Finally, it's super cool to see Hakoto reunite with Erudu after 14 years of separation. And with that, we have reached the end of day 7 of Z Memories. I like this Haku duology quite a bit if it isn't blatantly obvious. It is a fantastic sequel that manages to build upon the original story while being much more impressive in terms of character development. It definitely isn't perfect, but I came in expecting about the same as the original I played over a decade ago, and was pleasantly surprised to end up with one of my favorite visual novels. As always, a like button is down below if you enjoy the content, Twitter handle will appear in the middle, and subscribe if you want to support me. I also want to talk about notification buttons. You may or may not notice, but if you don't hit the notification all button, as I'm showing up here, you won't actually receive a notification of when my new videos come out, which is currently every Tuesday and Saturday. Just subscribing doesn't notify you of future videos. I know, kinda dumb, but what can you do? Thought I would point it out because I didn't know about it until now, and I feel like some of you might have missed some videos that you probably would have been interested in. As for the teaser, again, it will be a Key Studio game, so look forward to that, I suppose. As always, last time Z Memory on ANO Celia is on top, with the bottom being something else you might find interesting. I hope to see all of you next time.